Woman, an in-depth exploration of the world of women today with Sandra Elkin.
Good evening and welcome to Woman. My guest this evening is Wilma Scott Heide. Wilma is presently a distinguished visiting scholar at the University of Massachusetts. She is vice president of the Women's Coalition for the Third Century. Wilma was president of NOW from 1971 to 1974. She describes herself as a feminist at large. We're going to discuss the Women's Coalition for the Third Century and this and that. Wilma's one of the most outspoken people I know. I don't know why,
you just say
Wilma.
that because it's true, don't you?
I don't know why, but we haven't started and I feel like I've lost control already.
No.
Is it true that you once told someone you were the sex object of the feminist movement or the sex symbol of the feminist movement?
Oh, I've told audiences of men that and kept an absolutely straight face while I looked them over, yes.
Well, why do you do that, Wilma?
For fun, and because very often men need to relax. And also there's the idea of starting with people. A basic tenet of education is to start where people are, and the truth is that's where many men are in relation to women. And from that we can move to all kinds of radical and other healthy things.
I want us to be a little serious.
All right, we
Okay.
will.
Let's talk about the Women's Coalition for the Third Century. Now, I think it's not really a very well-known organization.
No, it's not.
I really
It's not.
hadn't heard much about it, and I don't know what they're all about.
Well, let me tell you something about it. We really started meeting with the American Revolution Bicentennial Commission, now administration, in 1972. And by late 73, we realized that as a matter of integrity, if we wanted to talk about the empowerment of women, and we did, and about feminism, and we did, that we would really have to form something that was autonomous and go on our own. There were a lot of things that happened that brought that about. So we did. We met together. It's about 14 national organizations, includes NOW, and different local groups and a lot of individuals. And we think that we're doing some things that aren't being done in some ways otherwise in the movement. Even if they are, they still need done. There's a lot of the organizations in it that are women who are religionists in one way or another, nuns and ministers and so forth, and women who just work through the church. And we think it's very important to do that and to bring in the spiritual aspects, self-defined. It's not secular. We also think that we need to address the bicentennial per se and the meaning of it, and to recognize that the United States of America represents a continuing revolution. And one of the most significant things that's happening in that regard now is, of course, the feminist revolution, worldwide, but certainly in this country. Also, we need to work on the networking among women, and to recognize that while this country was born, in effect, in war, that we need a rebirth through alternative means, at a peaceful means. And so we organized as a Women's Coalition for the Third Century. One of the very early things we felt is that the Declaration of Independence in this country, of course, did not include the majority of the population. It didn't include women of all races or minority men. It was only our forefathers who did the writing, and there were four mothers, you know. So we have developed over the years, over 100 people participated in the drafting of it, a Declaration of Interdependence. It's accompanied by a Declaration of Imperatives that are almost prerequisites. The Declaration of Interdependence, we think, is a much more mature and realistic model and idea.
You mean you're writing
for individuals and nations.
You rewriting the Declaration of Independence?
Oh, we've written a new one, and it's really the 1976 counterpart to what our foremothers did at the centennial in 1876. Now, most people don't know, and I didn't know it about 5 years ago, that our foremothers, including Susan B. Anthony and others, impeached this nation's government. And the nation, of course, was very deserving, still is, for that matter. So we see this document, the Declaration of Interdependence, as the 1976 counterpart, and we'll present it to this nation, whether it wants it or not. As a matter of fact, we'll be participating with women in Philadelphia in a reenactment of the 1876 event, and then bring it up to date with this document that I think speaks to the reality that we still live in a world where, and I'm paraphrasing from the document, where art has yielded to technology, where the expressive has yielded to the instrumental, where tools have yielded to weapons, where what we've called the feminine has yielded to the masculine, and where women are still yielding to men, and girls are still being taught to yield to boys. Now that is, it seems to me, obviously very unhealthy. And so we intend, in ways supportive of and additional to what's going on in the women's movement, intend to be part of the architects, not merely helping, but the architects, gives the leadership, and we think we have the visions for the possibilities of this next century.
What are the other organizations that are supportive of it? You mentioned 14 organizations.
We're part of it. I mentioned now the National Women's Political Caucus, a National Coalition of Nuns, the National Assembly of Women's Religious, the Grail, the National Black Feminist Organization, the National Committee on Household Employment. I always hesitate to mention names because if you leave any out.
I think that gives people pretty much an idea.
It's very much a wide spectrum. And there are different other organizations, individuals, and groups that have worked on one thing or another, or been in support of the coalition.
I was reading the material that you sent me, and the only thing that I wonder is, how realistic are some of your goals?
Well, there is a spiritual dimension, almost an ethereal. But we think that's very important because I think a lot of it shows, and frankly, one of the reasons I've been doing so much time to it, we're all too busy for it, to tell you the truth, is because the people are so wonderful and so visionary, I think it's realistic in the sense that because for most of us who are in it, we have been a part of this movement, and it's realistic in the sense that very often many of us haven't had time to think through what are the possibilities, beyond all the kind of legislative things, beyond the changes in the schools, beyond the changes that are going on in the churches, or at least been started, and in the political process and so forth. What do we envision? What kind of a world, what kind of a century, what kind of a nation do we envision, and how can we make it possible? So it's a process. It's of getting together and of bringing out, for instance, the reality that the kinds of traits and characteristics and values that have been considered feminine have not been generally valued in our society at large, and they've been considered as if they were women's prerogative. And of course, what we've called the feminine is a part of every man and boy, and what we've called the masculine is a part of every girl and every woman. But to translate these in this action, now I think one of the very important things about the coalition is, not in the only way, but one of the very important ways that people from the secular part of the movement and those who are working through their churches are working together in a mutual support. So I don't worry too much when people say how realistic it is, because I've been a part of enough movements, including the feminist movement, that most of the things we did, people sometime or another say it's unrealistic. You can't do it. It's impossible. And I think we have only started, laid some foundation to make some things happen. So I don't know. I say to people, become a part of it and find out. You'll be a part of translating these things that seem so idealistic and so unreal into action. And we'll see how it happens. I don't have a blueprint.
Is there a conflict? I know you've always been very involved in the women's movement. Is there a conflict between your involvement in the women's movement and this in any way?
Well, this is a part of the movement.
But it's really not a women's organization, though.
Well, yes, it is. But I remind people that the word women can include men, unlike the reverse. She can include he, much more generic and basic. And there are men that have been involved as children, too. So no, there's no conflict. I think it's a support of, and it has some additional dimensions.
Wilma, what do you think about the bicentennial? Now, there's supposedly a lot of money around for bicentennial projects and so on. Are women going to be fairly represented in the bicentennial? Do you think?
Not in the official kinds of things, and not women with what is often called new consciousness in very great ways. If one looks at the funding that the official bicentennial administration is giving, Congresswoman Pat Schroeder had got the documentation that as of a couple of months ago, unless they've changed remarkably, less than 2.5% of the funds from the administration itself has gone for anything that could really be called women's programming, let alone anything that's feminist, for heaven's sakes. So yes, women are participating and kind of infiltrating, because women are more active these days outside of the home. But in terms of having to the best of my knowledge, a significant role in what is communicated to other countries about the meaning of the bicentennial and the meaning of this country. I mean, what is this country about? What does it pretend to be? I would say not, unless something remarkable has happened.
Is the
they're going to have
coalition
some resource centers, which looks like women, giving more service. It may be something different than that, but that's what it is.
Is the coalition trying to right that inequity at all? Is that one of your goals?
Yes, I think so, but I think more as a catalyst and a stimulant. But I think what we're also doing is we're going on our own in ways that apparently we were not really able to significantly communicate to the bicentennial administration, which is one of the reasons for our existence.
You really is it
So
fair to
we've
say there was a
endorsed a lot of
split in a
things,
sense
hasn't it?
that you started out working with the federal government on this project, and then you got a broader vision and you decided to go off in
we have a
another?
broader vision, and we have, of course, a much more radical view. And when I say radical, I mean what it means. It means to get to root causes of situations and problems. So yes, I think we had to, and it was a matter of integrity for us.
I'm going to hold up your declaration of interdependence here and show people what it looks like. It's a very interesting document. I'm especially interested in your imperatives. Where can people write if they would like a copy of this or if they want some more information?
Well, the address, the person who's serving as staff coordinator is, I think it's 99 Deerhurst Boulevard in Buffalo, New York.
Okay. Let's talk about the imperatives for a minute. Can you list them, or do you want to? Can you list some?
I'm not sure. But I think they are very much that the imperatives that are coming out of the feminist movement. And in all honesty, there were discussions within the coalition about whether or not it should be in here. And I was one of the people that said I would have nothing to do with it if the imperatives were not there.
Well, you say things like not to be taxed without representation.
Right. It's still tyranny. Taxation without representation or misrepresentation is still tyranny. And I think it's important to get those things in.
You think we all shouldn't pay our taxes?
Probably not. Probably not. I haven't been able to get anybody to join in with me, and I think for an individual to do it alone, it's possible. But what you do is spend a lot of energy hassling the federal government, and it's made to look like this individual is some kind of a nut, when it's a basic issue. I've had a lot of people agree with me on the idea. But only one other person so far who has actually been willing to not pay taxes on the grounds that women have been excluded by law and as well as illegally, and still are hardly represented and very much misrepresentation. So I think these imperatives are important because otherwise, as you noticed and you noted, the Declaration of Interdependence talks very much in much more general terms and in a more global kinds of terms, that it's very easy for women to one more time be forgotten. So I consider these imperatives as almost prerequisites before the others can come about. But we still have to keep in mind this kind of vision. It's not the vision. And I'm sure if we got together, we'd revise it and refine it one more time. But I think it gives some sense that when, as feminists, What we're talking about are not what some people call women's issues. They're certainly that. They include that. But I think we need to address ourselves to every human issue in the world. Every human issue in the world. And we haven't done it in this declaration, but I think we've gotten to a good many.
Do you think that's a mistake that the women's movement is making, that it isn't broad enough in the sense that it isn't really
I think it is
addressing-
much broader. I think it's much broader than is generally known. I think that in increasing numbers, and many of the people who are doing, in my view, some of the most vital and some of the most important work in the movement are not generally known to the media and through the media. They really aren't. Some are, of course, and you've been a very important part, I think, of bringing that out, Sandy, you and those that work with you on this program. But there's some people who are doing some very important work in terms of analysis, in terms of changes in their lives, and in terms of the kinds of things they are creating that are not generally known to the people at large. So I think that that if we haven't addressed every human issue, we will. But there are many people that see this as not only a change in our consciousness, not only a change in our individual life, but very profound and really revolutionary. You know, I'm not talking about the old shoot 'em up, bang bang kind, but radical changes in society. We need to move, for instance, from what has been a men's center of gravity in our academic worlds, in all of our institutions, to what I would call a women's center of gravity. Remember again that the word women in the concept does include men. And we think it would be much more humane. For instance, if you take the definitions, even in the presently inadequate dictionaries, of humane and what we call the feminine, they're almost identical. Now, I am not saying that women are superior to men morally. I don't know that. You know, whose standards?
No one knows it.
I'm not saying that women are going to save the world, but I think what we've called the feminine values are the more humane, and the evidence is overwhelming that the world really belongs to what his masculinity has produced, and the terrors are all around us. So I think that these kinds of values that are much more humane, we might call the feminine, the compassion, the tenderness, the openness, the receptivity, the caring kinds of things that women have been more conditioned to do and men can learn to do. These are the kinds of things that we envision can make the difference.
Wilma, I know you're writing a book now. Is this what you're talking about?
This is one of the things. It's entitled at the moment, Feminism for the Health of It, which may be the best part of the book. But it's on my vision of the values and the implications of the feminist movement.
You see
taking
it as a
look at many
values revolution, don't
Oh,
you?
absolutely. It's a values revolution, among other things. There's no question about that in my mind.
Maybe you should explain that a little bit.
Well, it's simply a change in the way we look at ourselves, and I think what we're about is creating new kinds of human beings. I mean, let's go back to the newborn. What if we didn't know the sex of our children and just raised our children in terms of what is our transcending reality, our humanness? That's what we are primarily.
There are people, though, who would say that would be, terribly damaging.
No, they're not persuasive. But I know people say that. They're not persuasive. Of course the children will learn that, which sex they are. And they will learn that that's an important part of their identity. But what transcends all that for all of us, what we all have in common with each other, is our humanity. And we've been deprived of part of that. Any woman who has been frightened out of being anything that's called manly or masculine is oppressed. Any man that's been discouraged or frightened out of being what's called feminine is oppressed. And all have been denied part of our humanity. So no, I wouldn't worry about that at all, because just ordinary, natural, and that's not the same as normal. Curiosity. They're going to find out what their sex and something of the meaning of it, but in different terms, and I would hope feminist terms.
Before the program, when you and I were sitting here, someone was talking to you about an experience he had had with some women who were very vicious to some other women, and that was a very upsetting experience for this person. And you said it's normal, but it's not natural.
Yes, yes. We often equate that which is normal, which only means average or typical, with that which is natural, that is in the nature of the organism. Now they can be the same, but they aren't necessarily. For instance, sexism, the sexual stereotyping, and the subtle or the blatant oppression of women, and repression of much in men, is very normal, but I don't think it's natural. Feminism is, I think, very natural, but it's not yet normal, you see? Now, I envision the day as an incurable optimist, and I don't even think I'm sick. I envision the day when feminism, and what we're really talking about this and insisting on, will be so natural and so normal that we'll look back on this period of time and earlier and wonder why we even consider these things debatable. It's really very primitive and almost barbaric. So,
is there anything that's happened so far that's evolved from the beginning of this current women's movement that you can say that about? I wonder why we debated that. There isn't, is there?
Not really, except people would say equal pay for equal work, but that's still not a reality.
Yeah.
But this rebirth of feminism is still relatively young. It's really in many ways in its infancy. I mean, we've really hardly cleared our throats. We've really, I mean, with all that's happened, and I say that as somebody who's been very involved, I think we've hardly started.
I have to ask you, you know, because you were for so long a president of NOW, I have to ask you what you think about what's going on now. And what I mean is some of the controversy that's coming out of NOW, the rest of the women's movement, some of the political infighting and so on. How do you feel about that?
Well, in some ways not good at all, because I do see some, what shall I say, going back in some instances to what has been generally the male style. You know, politics as usual. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, and some attacking of the people rather than bringing out the issues. I don't think it's all. I think some of it is healthy. Some of the differences and the disagreements and the change and the real or the attempts to grow, I think it's very healthy.
It sometimes doesn't appear very healthy, though, Wilma.
No, it doesn't. And also, in truth, often the parts that are the most difficult or vicious, really, is an accurate word, are the things that are picked up and, again, communicated to other people, whether it's through the mass media generally or other means of communication. And people forget that there really are some healthy things going on, I think, within NOW. I think there's some unhealthy things, too. So it's not all of one piece. I think that we're really trying to create something with a feminist ethics and values that in many ways hasn't existed before. And we don't have a blueprint. And we have to make things almost out of whole cloth. And we have to do it in a setting that doesn't value these things. So, you know, given these enormous difficulties and virtually no resources, very little support, relatively, from existing institutions, I think the miracle is how much we've achieved. But I'm very pained by some things that are happening. So I don't think it's all one or the other. I think all these kinds of things are going on, and I'm hopeful that, and more optimistic than not, that what we're about is so important, and that we believe in it, that we will be able to be mutually, supportive enough. I don't think there's any guarantee of that. A movement, an organization, is a creation of people, and it can be very fragile. So we can't take these things for granted. But I know enough really superb people. Superb is the only word. Just really very fine people whom I cherish in the movement. Some of whom I disagree with. That I'm optimistic that we can come through it. And I think one of the reasons we'll do it is not only the enormous commitment of the people I know, just thousands, but I think because society and the world needs feminism so much.
What about the charge that there is no real leadership, there is no leadership to take the place of people who are currently leaders, and then that there are some people who say we don't really need leaders?
Well, I think one of the things we're doing, just as we are redefining power and reassigning power, that we have to redefine leadership. There are leaders, and sometimes, and this is particularly, but not only true for women, there are many things that represent leadership that haven't been called leaders. Feminist style often is very different. It's very different. And I think it has to be. So I don't buy this business that we can go for leaderlessness, because whether we call people that or not, people act as leaders who do give clues, who have some sense or have some of the kinds of things that need to be done, or are able to elicit the trust of other people, or who have the self-confidence or have the vision, and a whole lot more. So it exists, whether it's called that or not. The only question is the quality.
You brought us a game.
Oh, yes.
I should tell about the
There's
game
something
quickly.
new on the scene that the
Hold it
Women's
forward a little bit
Coalition
more.
for the 3rd century has endorsed.
And we've
game
got to
is
make
called
it clear that
Herstory.
this is not on the market at the
No,
moment.
it's not yet on the market. Won't be till for a couple months. But it's called Herstory, and that is new on the scene.
There's so much more that I want to talk to you about, and we've only got about 30 seconds. Can you answer one question really fast? You are a nurse. You describe yourself as a card-carrying nurse.
Yes.
And you talk to nurses a lot, nurses groups and so on.
And I listen.
And you listen a lot, yes. What's a quick message for nurses, what they can do for women's health care?
I think feminism is an imperative for healthy nursing. But I say that with any occupational group I'm with.
Wilma, thank you very much for coming.
It's good to be here.
Thank you for watching, and good night.
Woman was produced by WNED-TV, which is solely responsible for its content, and was funded by public television stations, the Ford Foundation, and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.